There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer and meditation. Please be seated. Order. Honorable members, may you please be seated. Honorable members, may you please be seated. Thank you. The Secretary will read the order of the day.
Resumption of debate on the President's State of the Nation address.
The Honorable, the Chief Whip of the National Council on Provinces.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, His Excellency the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency Deputy President David Mabuza, the Deputy President of the ANC, Comrade Paul Mashatile, Honorable members, distinguished members of the South African Local Government Association. Honorable Speaker, allow me to join the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Comrade Phemi Majodina, and other ANC speakers that as the African National Congress, we enter this debate with a clear conscience of providing detailed account of the route we have traversed since the last State of the Nation address, and to point out the new trajectory at the center of which is putting the interests of our people above anything else. We do this by rejecting with contempt provocation by those who come here for electioneering posturing as a strategy to conceal their inability to provide concrete solutions to the problems that face our people. The State of the Nation address is about the people, it's about their interest, and it is for their interest. Perhaps it is worth reminding this august House that contrary to the Honorable Steenhuisen, the African National Congress is not a narrow electoral machine like the Democratic Alliance that scavenges on the sufferings of our people for survival, but has throughout its existence, the ANC serves as an agent for fundamental change and transformation. Honorable Speaker, we are here today to join our President, His Excellency Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, to reassure South Africa that despite the difficulties in our midst, with our 29 years of uninterrupted accumulated experience of governance, together with our people, we shall overcome our challenges for better future for all. The President outlined the accountability for the last SONA commitments before this SONA in the one-year review of progress on the 2022 State of the Nation commitments. Anyone bothered to read this account will see it as an honest reflection displaying progress. Several factors impact the implementation of some of these commitments. The escalating electricity crisis, the sluggish growth of the economy despite rebounding from the impact of coronavirus pandemic, and the persistence of the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Madam Speaker, this places vast expectation of our people on the State of the Nation address debate. It is our view as the ANC that central to this expectation is nothing else but to put the country on a new permanent trajectory of breaking ranks with the scourge of poor delivery of basic services and infrastructure, which is critical for economic recovery, reconstruction, and development. Infrastructure is a primary route to economic growth and development in that it releases the latent productivity in the factors of production and brings about an increase in the output of individual factors and units of production. It helps to coordinate inputs, outputs, and time to maximize the economic growth rate and enables maximum utilization of plethora of resources, leading to rapid economic development through efficiently employing all means available. Mr. President, contrary to the skeptics, you have surpassed the target of mobilizing international investment, especially for infrastructure development. As an international standard, the rule of law and good governance are fundamental for global investment. Mr. President, on this front, only the blind will fail to see how you have invested more energies and resources in strengthening and repurposing the criminal justice system in line with its constitutional mandate of acting without fear or favor in the fight against crime and corruption. This will go a long way in ensuring safety of all South Africans and ensuring and reassuring international investors that South Africa is a destination of choice for global investment. Infrastructure development and maintenance are the primary base for socio-economic development and job creation in any community, and local economic development is a developmental mandate that all municipalities carry. Through our oversight function, we have identified various factors in the three spheres of government. Firstly, mere allocating more funds is not a panacea to the challenge of basic services. Secondly, lack of capability, poor project planning and management, poor project implementation, and lack of accountability are a deep reality that should be addressed. Budget reprioritization under fiscal consolidation over several medium-term expenditure framework cycles had a negative impact and has yet to assist in enhancing the status of basic services and infrastructure spending. Fourthly, the lack of state capacity and capability, and where the state has contracted the private sector in other instances, resulted in high levels of underspending on allocation of conditional grants in other projects. And lastly, poor leadership and criminal networks in most instances, which is pointed out from various Chapter 9 institutions. Efficient economic infrastructure is the critical driver of economic efficiency, job creation, and inclusive economic growth. It links market in different areas and ensures that the rural areas have access to markets, contributing to food security in the country. National Infrastructure Plan 2050 is a critical vision which accords the nation a long-term trajectory which should inform planning and financing. Its purpose is to promote dynamism in infrastructure delivery and address institutional backlog and weaknesses that hinder success over the long term. It guides the way towards building stronger institutions that can deliver on the National Development Plan 2030 aspirations for investment linked to the provision of physical and digital infrastructure, including energy, water, commercial transport, and telecommunication. At the same time, phase 2 of the plan focuses on social infrastructure. Our infrastructure development should be climate change resilient to ensure sustainable development. Many of us are aware of the recent floods. About 7 of our 9 provinces are heavily affected. So it is imperative that this should be accommodated in terms of our plans to ensure that we can withstand these challenges. The impact of commuter rail route from Soweto, Naledi to Johannesburg has brought about relief for many workers who spend a significant portion of their salaries on transport. Such an intervention lowers the cost of living for many. There is indeed progress. We need to accelerate these efforts. The second phase of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project, a partnership between South Africa and Lesotho Mountain Kingdom, which the President highlighted, will go a long way in creating jobs for the people of Lesotho while simultaneously addressing the water scarcity and supply in provinces, Free State, Northwest, Gauteng, and others. In the last 2 years, the government under your leadership, President, has introduced the district development model as part of the critical intervention. But I must, before that, hasten to say that one of the good examples of reindustrialization and the progress that we are making is the Highveld Steel Industrial Complex. Through the efforts of the DTIC, we are now manufacturing railway lines that can be used on main lines, and as well as the bridge that will shorten the N2 between Eastern Cape and KZN is made in Mpumalanga. It shows the success of localization and building an integrated national economy. The district development model remains a critical instrument of macroeconomic development and the creation of SMMEs, which continues to contribute on local job creation. The one plan, one budget must be developed to enhance regional economic development and harness the capability of the state to deliver on its mandate. Despite this and continued government support in the form of municipal infrastructure grants allocated to address water, sanitation, roads, and lights, people in many towns across the country continue to witness the deterioration in the road infrastructure, lack of reliable and safe water supply, and use of pit and bucket toilets. Honorable President, you have visited all provinces during your Letsema campaign and the presidential imbizos. You have been in touch with the people. You know their concerns and their frustration. Communities highlighted their problems, articulated their issues, and they demonstrated that they were far ahead of many of the opposition parties who came here and grandstand, speaking as if they are speaking on behalf of communities. They shared those issues with you, Comrade President. The issues of potholes, general deterioration of public infrastructure due to lack of quality maintenance. Budgeting for maintenance and the existence of maintenance plan should be a critical requirement for all CAPEX expenditure. Water, sanitation, housing, and many others, load shedding as a critical and burning problem faced by our people in many parts of our country. We have seen how persistence of this problem has and continue to force investors to move from low revenue and poorly serviced municipalities to high revenue and well-serviced municipalities in the recent past. This will negatively affect or impact on local economic development of distressed municipalities. Undoubtedly, this not only reverses the gains on local employment creation, but also undermines the national effort on economic recovery, reconstruction, and development. The envisaged public procurement reforms will go a long way in addressing these gaps and ensuring on-time procurement of quality goods and services transparently and ethically. We need to ensure that our procurement policy enables the development of local manufacturing capacity of infrastructure inputs. And government should have a significant component of labor-intensive methodology to increase the impact of infrastructure development in lowering unemployment. Madam Speaker, the voice of organized local government is loud and clear, despite the subjective weaknesses that we have highlighted, and the current fiscal framework of local government continue to be the issue of concern. In line with the ANC decision for decisive action for renewed and interest of our people in turn to turn around the local government sector's critical vehicle for infrastructure development and maintenance, we must proceed from addressing these bottlenecks. Building technical capacity at the national level to intervene in distressed provinces will be critical to address underspending and poor project management. We must review all infrastructure development units through a skills audit to ensure all infrastructure implementing departments and that of municipalities have adequate technical skills and capacity. This will be critical to ensure that government can develop a robust, credible, and bankable project pipeline. Your Excellency, developing state capability, capacity, and skills remain a priority, and even partnership with the private sector will require enhancement of state capability in all three spheres of government to deliver on major infrastructure projects. To conclude, honorable members, this places enormous expectation of our people on the State of the Nation address debate. Central to this expectation is to put the country on a new permanent trajectory of breaking ranks with the poor delivery of basic services and infrastructure. The facts confirm the political will, progress, and trajectory of inclusive growth. We believe under your leadership, Comrade President, that this country is set to attend to the very burning issues that affect our people. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you. The next Honorable Member is the Honorable A.G. Whitfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, South Africans are less safe today than they were when you came to office, and that's a fact. How can we possibly feel safe when we are governed by a criminal syndicate that steals from the poor to give to the politically connected? A government run by a political party in which political killings have become standard operating procedure to climb the patronage ladder. What example are criminals in South Africa to follow, if not the example of their own government? At every SONA, your broken promises on fighting crime echo across the country and into the homes and the broken hearts of families across the country, living in fear every day that they will be the next victim. When you became president, you promised to halve violent crime within 10 years, but murder has increased by nearly 20% since you took office, while all contact crimes are up 13% in the last year. Last year, in your reply to the SONA debate, you acknowledged my contribution when I called for more effective use of technology. But 1 year later, not even the telephone lines are working. There are no drones in the sky and no body cams on police officers. Recent mass killings in the Eastern Cape further expose your broken promises, Mr. President. 2 mass killings in rural Beachy outside Mthatha in as many months. In KwaZulu, in Nelson Mandela Bay, there have been 2 mass killings in just 2 weeks, leaving 12 people dead and others injured, leaving a community shocked and shaken. This is not the kind of shock that you often exclaim, Mr. President. This is real and painful shock of the brutal and unrelenting slaughter of family members and neighbors in our communities. In the northern areas of Nelson Mandela Bay, gang violence has taken the lives of more than 20 people since the beginning of the year, while the Chatty police station in that area remains understaffed and under-resourced. In fact, police officers at this station lock themselves inside at night during load shedding because their generator doesn't work and they fear being attacked like the 5 police officers who were killed in the Ngobo police massacre. Across KwaZulu-Natal, the fear in the aftermath of the violent unrest of 2021 still lingers. Yet of the 10 police stations I visited in that province in 1 week last year, only 1 had a generator that worked, while others complained that they hadn't worked for years or that they couldn't get diesel due to centralized procurement issues. The evidence is clear, Mr. President. Your minister is failing to deliver results, but you are desperately clinging to him while our nation descends into criminal chaos. So bad is your minister that he stood here yesterday and told this House that 4,909 people were arrested last year for GBV-related crimes, as though it was some sort of a victory. What he didn't tell you, Mr. President, is that 57,102 women were victims of violent crime last year, which means that your minister's victory represents arrests of just 8% of the total number of GBV-related crimes. In your SONA last week, you said government will partner with the private sector to support the proper functioning of the 10111 centres, and while this is welcomed, if it is to be believed, it only made its way into your speech because in January this year, the DA exposed the complete dysfunction of the 10111 centres across the country. That's a fact. Dysfunction which has left millions of victims and witnesses of crimes helpless on the end of 7 million dropped phone calls over 3 years because they have less than half the staff required to man the phones. These dropped calls are crime statistics, Mr. President. There are victims on the ends of these calls. In one message I received recently, a grandparent wrote in Mission Vale, "We need help. My grandson has been shot more than 5 hours ago. His body is still in the house. They shot him. Do you know who to contact? The police don't respond." So here is a challenge for you, Mr. President. If you can turn this situation around and have 75% at least of the required staff employed with less than 10,000 dropped calls and uninterrupted power supply to every 10111 centre by your next SONA, I will literally eat the words off these pages. You see, without an actual plan, without a deadline and the results which follow, your words will remain meaningless while lives will continue to be lost. Over the years, you've successfully created the illusion that you are bolstering the ranks of the police with more members, when the truth is that there has been a net loss of 20,000 police officers over the last 10 years. You need only read the SAP's annual reports, which reveal that there were 199,000 personnel at the end of 2012, 182,000 at the end of 2021, and 178,000 by the end of this financial year, including your new recruits. And while we have many excellent police officers who go above and beyond the call of duty under the most difficult circumstances, they are being outnumbered by the unfit, poorly trained and corrupt cadres. What SAPS needs is to promote merit within its ranks, not cadres, and ensure that all appointments are beyond reproach if we have any hope in reversing the decline. South Africans want results, Mr. President, not more broken promises. And this is what they will vote for in 2024, a party that delivers results. In Parliament last year, you committed to investigating the Western Cape government's LEAP community safety model after acknowledging its successes. Well, now is the time for you to act in order to keep your promise to keep our communities safe by throwing your full support and the fiscus at a tried and tested policing model with proven results. When LEAP was launched in Philippi East in 2022, that station has now completely fallen off the list of top 30 contact crime stations in South Africa. Over a 12-month period, Gugulethu noted a 30.6% decrease in murder. Delft has seen a 17.4% decrease in murder, with contact crime also coming down. These are the results, Mr. President. These are the actual results that should follow from a promise. This is the kind of leadership that we deserve to build a safer South Africa for all of us. This is how you get things done, Mr. President. You make a promise, and then you keep it. We don't need more hollow words and broken promises from an empty suit at your next SONA. We need results, and you can start by firing your minister. I thank you.
I thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you. The Minister of Human Settlements.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, presiding officers, cabinet colleagues, honourable members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Honourable Whitfield, it is important to acknowledge that indeed there are issues that we need to deal with in fighting crime and corruption in the country. But it is untrue not to acknowledge that there's been men who've been trained and passed out in recent months as part of ensuring that there's police visibility on the ground. Many of us who understand the importance of fighting crime would understand the presence of visibility and police visibility to make sure that people do feel safe. Mo President wa rena, boikemo bjo bogolo bja rena go sa kgathalege gore re mohlobo mang goba re mmala ofe goba karolo efe ka gare ga naga ya rena. Go swanetše gore re tsebane gore ka nnete bodulo ba rena gore humanega re dula gabotse le ka boiketlo. Ka bjona boikemo bo le karolwanang ya rena e leng gona ka ra 26 ya molaotheo wa Afrika Borwa ye e tlhatlhago melawana ya tša mengwako ya mmušo wa Afrika Borwa. Re ikemišeditše go bea batlhoki le batsofadi ka pele mo lenaneong la kabo ya rena ya mengwako ya mmuso. Tsalelo morago ya mengwakana ke kgolo. Eupša re tshepiša gore kabelo e tla dirwa ka lebelo. Batho ba borena ke kgale ba letile mengwako ya bona, eupša ba bang setse ba hweditše mengwako ya bona. Ke ka moo re re mmušo wa rena o mekamekana le ditlhotlho tse di leng gona gore re kgone gore re fetišetse le goreng di swanetše gore batho ba rona ba be le tsona. Ba bantši ba bona ba dutše ka tshepo, ba lebeletše rena gore re tle re kgone go ba thuša, ba tle ba humane ditshebeletso tse loreng ba di tshwanetše. I think we can all draw inspiration from the words of Michelle Obama, who said, "You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all of the world's problems at once, but don't underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take a life of its own, but more importantly, it can be able to ensure that people look forward to tomorrow." Furthermore, I quote Martin Luther King, who said, I unquote, 300 years of humiliation, abuse, deprivation cannot be expected to find voice in whisper, unquote. Housing for the missing middle remains a serious challenge. A revised first home finance scheme, formerly known as Help Me Buy a House program, was revised in the past financial year, amongst others to allow for funding for households who hold permission to occupy certificates in communal land. This is particularly important to the relation to the extent of credit and funding to households in rural communities. This will allow the missing middle to start acquiring economic assets without which they struggle to meaningfully participate in the economy. Honorable Malema, yesterday, Mr. President said to you that it is irresponsible for a man to be at the top and do nothing. I totally agree with him. However, he got it wrong. You are not a man on top who's doing nothing. Under your leadership, sir, this is what you have done. We have acquired buildings in the inner city areas, such as Sea Point, Cape Town, listen, and 2 ESCOM buildings located Braamfontein, Johannesburg, Kimberley, for social housing purposes. For this development has potential to release 1,200 units for families. These are efforts, honorable members, to building an inclusive society and cities through our social housing program. It is meant to alter the apartheid spatial planning, and this has gained momentum. In the coming weeks, Mr. President, we will be launching a number of social housing projects that have taken place under your leadership, and these are the following. Tshwane Marabastad project, which has produced 1,200 units, and this has been driven by Black-owned companies, and 60% of them are women-owned, as part of our commitment to transformation. Motlhakeng project, with a total number of 1,020 units in the West Rand in Gauteng, another transformational achievement. Hope City project, 1,114 units in Nkangala municipality in Mpumalanga, 100% owned Black people and 30% women owned. John Street project, which has 385 units, located in Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, and 63% of them are Black owned and 30% women. Maitland here in the city of Cape Town, it's not a DA project, it's national government driven, which a total of 204 units that will be completed by the end of March. This is what, President, has been happening under your leadership. Honorable Steenhuisen, yesterday, Mr. President, said to you instead that instead of leading us to cross the Rubicon at Sona, the President has told us to turn around. I'm glad, Mr. President, that you didn't follow what Honorable Steenhuisen Rubicon was taking you to, if indeed it would have been a disaster for the majority of the working class and the poor who remain and who mainly we represent as the African National Congress and have their hopes and dreams in your hands. And this is why, Mr. President, it is because our attempts to integrate the poor and working class into urban communities have faced serious backlash and resistance. I'm speaking here, Mr. President, of a group in the urban reach that we call Not in My Neighborhood. Honorable Nkondlo spoke about. It is a challenge for us, led mainly, majority of the time in the wards, by DA councillors. These are well-resourced groups whose sole purpose is to ensure that the poor and the working class families remains in the outskirts of the cities. This group is motivated by mixture of racism and disdain for the poor and the working class. They regard the poor in the cities as refugees who must be rounded up and shipped back to the rural areas. Every time our government acquires land for human settlements, honorable members, for these families, this group stands up to say very loudly, not in our neighborhood. They utilize all sorts of tricks to resist, including courts, which causes delays in these families to receive shelter. The only crime these people, poor working class communities and families, have committed to receive this abominable treatment is that they are the descendant of the victims of apartheid and were born without any means. All freedom-loving South Africans, both black, white, colored, Indian, all races, all classes, needs to stand up against these bullies. Honorable members, title deeds in the hands of an elderly woman who has never owned a property in their lives means the world to them. It is for this reason this government decided to fast-track the release of title deeds as an important instrument of economic empowerment. Working together with Operation Vulindlela, we will be able to expand this. We've started with unlocking the projects in Gauteng, especially in Mawika, where it will give us 14,000 title deeds in that area. Land redistribution is important as part of our work. We are working together with DPWI, as President has said, to release earmarked 14,000 hectares of land. Currently, we have 2,689 hectares of this land in the hands of human settlements, which will be able to give us more than 64,000 housing opportunities planned as part of release of land to ensure that there shall be houses, security, and comfort, as the Freedom Charter has said. Honorable members, we have 2,700 informal settlements in the country and counting. Out of this, we have already started working with 1,284 informal settlement upgrading at various stages. What does this mean? This means that we are able to provide water, electricity, sanitation, and security of tenure in these informal settlements. And we are currently working to ensure that we upgrade them. They are at various stages across the country, and we are intensifying this work. We will be able to ensure that we can be able to support all the people that are in this country. Mr. President, the issue of climate change and natural disasters are continuously affecting us. We would have seen the floods across the country and the fires at the beginning of this year. We are reconfiguring our work so that we can be able to respond within speed and time that you have requested us to do. But more importantly, ensure that families that are vulnerable and the most communities that are poor can be able to receive support from us as government. We will also rework in terms of our programs to build climate change resilience in terms of infrastructure going forward, because it is very clear that with the climate change, we are not able to do. With that, Mr. President, you are a man at work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable M. Dlamini.
Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief and President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, President Julius Malema, members of the Central Command Team, fighters and ground forces. We would like to take this opportunity to send our deepest condolences to the Ngema family in Mkondo Ward 3, who lost their 17-year-old daughter who was murdered during a service delivery protest. Yesterday, the overrated Deputy Minister of Kokta, Honorable Nkadimeng, stood here unashamedly and spoke about a white paper that speaks about local government that works together with other spheres of government while people are dying because of lack of service delivery. When she was reminded about her tenure in Polokwane as a mayor, she shouted that she's no longer there and those things are of the past. Now, the reality in Polokwane municipality under her, and even now, is nowhere near close to being an exemplary municipality. There is still water and drainage problems and a crisis in Polokwane.
Order, honorable members, please. Don't drown the speaker. Don't drown the speaker. Thank you.
As long as they get it, speak. Roads in the city and in townships are not taken care of. There are no functional streetlights and basic necessities. Yet someone was screaming here as if she was a paragon of local government. The district development model she screamed about has not given any results, and yet she pretends and wants to act as if she's the panacea to South African development and the lack of service delivery disasters. How on earth can anyone in their right mind claim successes of the local state when almost all of them are dysfunctional? These claims of ANC successes in municipalities are misleading. Tshwane is in crisis, and the crisis in Tshwane started under the very overrated Siputla Ramakgopa, who the ANC tried to replace with Ms. Togo Didiza and lost elections dismally. There is not a single municipality that is run perfectly by the ANC in South Africa. It is unfortunate that the Deputy Minister comes here and speaks of a discredited 1998 white paper on local government by scientific and empirical research. The idea that you can revive local government through white paper and the so-called district development model is foolish and misguided. The list of incorrect and misguided 1998 assumptions is that the white paper is long, but just to name a few. The white paper assumed that municipalities would be functional. Your president just told us that the number of dysfunctional municipalities has increased from 163 today and from the 123 before he took office in 2018. The Auditor General reports tell us this every day, every year. 2, it has assumed that municipalities will collect revenue. Municipalities do not have the administrative capacity to collect revenue, let alone keep basic records. The ANC did not build any administrative capacity in a local government in the last 25 years, since the adoption of the white paper. Even if they collect revenue, our people still don't have money. More than 11 million people are unemployed. More than 28 million people are on social grants. Only 1.6 million taxpayers out of the 20 million who can work and pay taxes are excluded by the system. Who is going to pay for the municipal services and the property rates? The white paper assumed that with democracy, South Africa's spatial planning would change from race-based to more integrated. The opposite has happened. The ANC has perpetuated apartheid economy and racial spatial planning. Nice and clean cities are for whites, and a few blacks and informal settlements are for the black majority. A viable local government will need internal capacity through the insourcing of critical municipal services and the appointment of a competent and well-remunerated workers. Industrialization through building local economy and local procurement. Food security for all households, clinics to open 24 hours. We need municipalities with a clear town planning program. The reason why the ANC is being decisively defeated in all South African major metropolitan municipalities is because the ANC lacks the collective and individual capacity to deliver meaningful and impactful services to our communities.
Okay.
In 2026, the ANC will be wiped out in all municipalities because our people are saying enough is enough.
Time up. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, thank you. I now invite the Honorable Councillor B. Stofile.
Speaker, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic, the Deputy President, the ministers and deputy ministers, the premiers, the members of this House, I must first say it will be important to put the facts correctly. Since the establishment of local government system in South Africa, on the 5th of December, 2022, the country was completing 22 years of local government wall-to-wall system. Coming from a local government system that it has been divided on the basis of class, race, and color, and the amalgamation of the municipal system, it created a municipal system that today we have 257 municipalities that do not look on the basis of the location and the color of individuals. And that is the fact. The 1998 white paper located functions and responsibilities in local government, and it is a fact that 46% of the constitutionally declared functions are located in local government. It is therefore important that...
Honorable Stofile, take your seat. Honorable Member Josie, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Speaker. I wanted to ask, the councillor is shaking. Don't you want to check if he's okay? Because the next thing he might collapse, it might be a really exigent matter.
That's not a point of order. Okay.
Speak. Maybe he must speak sitting down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Honorable Member, that was not a point of order.
Yeah, Sheikh.
Please, you may proceed, Honorable Councillor.
Whereas local government has undergone rapid transition and transformation over the 22 years, there can be no doubt that it has had a profound impact on the lives of ordinary South Africans in expanding the provisions of service to our people. While it is true that a number of serious and complex challenges persist in some municipalities, but by and large, there are extensive examples, as confirmed by the municipal non-financial census, that local government has delivered quality services and a better life for the majority of our people. Madam Speaker, local government has, in the same breath, came under a lot of scrutiny recently, perhaps necessary, so as this is the most visible sphere, closest sphere of government to the people. Furthermore, our system of wall-to-wall municipal system means that all developmental work happens within a municipal ward in one way or another. Nearly all services of our people get or do not get from government find the most concrete expression at local government level. Despite its most pivotal role, it remains the stepchild, and therefore we appreciate the work that has been done by the President of the Republic in the recent past in allowing the cooperative governance to function, and that is why over the last couple of months we have been engaging the different ministers, including Minister of Small Businesses, insofar as how do we collaborate and cooperate in making sure that economic development does take place in local government. Secondly, we do appreciate that having 22 years of existence in local government, we have been shouting by lack of funding in the system. And I must appreciate and say here as SALGA leadership that we appreciate that the national government allow us to enter into discussions, and hence we have an engagement with the Minister of Finance looking in the funding modalities that must assist local government. It's something that we must appreciate. Over the 20 years, various policies, legislators, and support program measures has been brought about. And the previous leaders of SALGA have asked, what next, having done this? And what it became crystal clear at the time, it was the support to local government, because the success of local government is a success of government as a whole. And thereby it requires us to entrench on the cooperative governance and build solid system of government to respond to challenges that our people are facing today. Turning to the current elephant in the room called coalition government, that we are none of us talking about in this room. We wish to spend some time in sharing our frustration as an association and thereby a problem in the country. Unlike previous elections, the 2021 local government elections gave rise to the most dramatic results as it relates to coalition government. These developments suggest that coalition government will clearly become a common feature of our political landscape in South Africa going forward. In 2021, it was only 3 parties that formed coalition government. But today, since 2021 into today, the local government coalition government have risen from 27 to 87, led by more than 6 parties today. And that tells us that there is a crisis that we are going towards it. As South African local government, working together with the University of the Western Cape, we have developed a framework of coalition. It is common knowledge that if you go to a municipality today, you'll find a mayor. In the next 2 hours, you'll find a different mayor. And therefore, it means the situation in local government, it becomes unstable. And it requires leadership and members of parliament to look at that. One of the issues where in many places, including the places where you are operating, anywhere, in many places in South Africa, President, in South Africa, if we don't deal with this animal called coalition, if we don't deal with animal called coalition, this animal called coalition, it robs the majority of our people. Majority of our people went and vote. When they vote, you political parties, you lock yourself in a room and cut the cake according to what is your interest. At the time, community is outside, locked outside there. When the service delivery is not rendered, the blame goes to municipality. And we are calling to government and calling to parliament to act on this, because it's a problem that is going to be with us for a very long time. And we suggest that there must be certain instruments that must be introduced. One of the instruments is as follows. I'll make an example, for instance, President. On various metros in the country, if I can take Nelson Mandela, for instance, if we can go as a country and accept to change the type of municipal system. Currently, the type of municipal system is 1 to 6. and 6 is metro. And in the metro, you are allowed to have an executive mayoral type. In a coalition arrangement, everyone demands to have a right to employ. And that is why you see the emergency and rise of employment cost in the municipality. Because it's a problem that we must all deal with, because leadership, political party locking themselves in a room discussing about who should be the leader of that municipality. One of the dispute is about what is it that I must benefit as a political party A. And that issue, it must be dealt with. And we are saying, for instance, in Nelson Mandela, President, we want to put it because you are members of parliament. You are contesting elections, all of you, from political parties. In Nelson Mandela, for instance, if you take a collective executive type municipality, in that municipality and any other municipality, what it means ANC is going to get 4 seats, DA is going to go 4 seats, EFF is going to get 1 seat, and the community organization in Port Elizabeth is going to get 1 seat. What it requires is for us to have a conversation amongst yourself as political parties to deal with the challenge that you are facing at local government. The second issue, President, is the killing of councillors and municipal officials. And the killing of councillors and municipal officials, it's a problem that it creates and it works against the intention of professionalizing of local government. There will be professionals that would want to go to the unsafe place. And therefore, it is important that the local government space to be created safe and be protected. In our endeavor to make sure that the local government does function. Otherwise, if we don't spend time in protecting those that have been accepting to render service and be threatened by criminals in the local space, will create a problem. The next point, President, that we wish in the State of the Nation address to be addressed is the protection of the revenue base of municipal system and the rising of the tax base of a municipal system. A municipal system, according to white paper, is not reviewed yet, is a house that it had the power to review, but we are working from it. It says 90% of the income generation of a municipality will come from a municipal income. And that assumption, it was based on the belief that there will be growth of the economy and many other activities, and there will be people that will be paying. Currently, we are facing the same challenge that the community is not growing and therefore they is not be able to pay, and therefore it requires some other way of protecting the revenue base, including number of issues that individual organizations and they want to flood the local government with in eroding the income levels of a municipal system. In this sense, President, that is why to us as local government we believe it is correct thing, learning from 2020 disaster situation in our country. What we have appreciated as local government in that period is the ability of the government in all spheres to work together, consolidate their energy, both human resources and financial resources, and intervene in communities. And it benefited to us because it speaks on the law that we have passed as this House called Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act that compels the different spheres of government to work together towards achieving the same objective, that is service delivery to our communities. And that is why in ourselves, listening to debate as of yesterday, one question, an example was made of a community member somewhere in the Eastern Cape where the house, it was burned down through the electricity as it comes back. And can you sit wherever you are and imagine of a councillor sitting at home, that house is burned down because of electricity, and that councillor is not empowered. Whom to interact with when there is that disaster? Because the councillor is the closest person to our communities. And therefore, that is why as South African Local Government Association, we believe disaster declaration is the right thing to do and coordinate processes towards rendering service to our communities. The issues about how the money is used, I think it's your political thing that you can deal with. Our interest is that how do we service our communities as a government, not as different individuals and spheres, but how do we optimally intervene on the challenges that our communities are facing. And we believe that it can go a long way. There are mistakes that we have learned in the disaster in the past, and we can improve on those mistakes. Our people need service. They don't want politicking. They need service at whatever material time, whatever differences that we have. But it is important that our people to get service from the government and from the parliament that they've elected. And that is why, in our view, we still believe that in the engagement between ourselves and the Minister of Finance to improve on financial allocation on the municipality, it's a right decision and it's a process that we need to follow going into the future. The last issue on this issue, President, is that we acknowledge and accept that we have established a crisis committee dealing with the energy and crisis. We would love as local government to participate there so that we can give a local content on that debate and discussion rather than being on the national level. It is our important role because our interest is that any decision taken at any level, it must go down into communities where we live and where we work. It is our interest that anything that it had to do with the life of our people, local government, it had to be taken on board and be engaged, and we really appreciate that. At least we have an engagement with various ministers in trying to pull them and help and infuse and give the will and energy on the intergovernmental relations framework, because that is the route to go. Cooperation of government, it had to come together and work together.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your time is up. Honorable members, the next speaker on my list is the Honorable M. Hlengwa.
Madam Speaker, Honorable President, and honorable members, Mr. President, if I had 47 minutes, I would urge you not to appoint a Minister of Electricity, because you are duplicating political bureaucracy in a already bloated and excessive cabinet, where you've got a Minister of Minerals and Energy who deals with policy. The Minister of Public Enterprises continues to be the shareholder. At the same time, you have declared a state of disaster, which the Minister of COGTA comes in to actually deal with those matters. On top of that, you have got NECOM, which is dealing with this crisis in the presidency. And what is clear, Mr. President, is that every time your ministers don't perform, instead of firing them, you protect them by taking things into the presidency. Be decisive, Mr. President. Fire them. Don't have a nanny cabinet. I'll see you nanny. If they are not working, fire them. What has happened is that you have got a bloated mega presidency now. Operation Vulindlela, which ordinarily should be with the Department of Trade, Industry and or Treasury, is in the presidency. The Energy Action Plan and Energy Security Plan, which should be with Minerals and Energy, is with the President. The Presidential Youth Employment Stimulus, which should be with the NYDA or the Department of Youth and Women, is with the President. Infrastructure investment, which is supposed to be with Public Works and Infrastructure, is with the President. The Just Energy Transition Investment Program, which must be with one of these many departments, is with the President. The Presidential Climate Commission, which should be with the Department of Forestry, Fishery and Environment, is with the President. Red Tape Reduction Team and Red Tape Reduction Council, which must be with the Department of Small Business, is with the President. So, Mr. President, quite frankly, it seems to us You have got no confidence in your own ministers. Let me go to this, Mr. President. Let me start where you started, where you say our people are not defined by the minerals under the earth and the work that we do. Your apology over the weekend to President Mbeki notwithstanding, one must agree with you. It's a failure of government that our people don't have access to the opportunities that come with mining, the oceans economy, the minerals of this country, the land, and so on and so forth. We cannot be defined by what we do not own. And so the transition and the transformation which should have taken place, Mr. President, under your watch, under the ANC's watch, has certainly not happened. All of these things combined and all of these factors combined actually speak to failure. Mr. President, there's been a lot of song and dance about traditional leadership and about the wall-to-wall municipalities that we have in the country. Here too, I want to make a call to you, Mr. President. Respond positively to the Cabinet Committee decision of December 2000, which sought to amend Chapters 7 and 12 of the Constitution to provide clarity on the powers, functions, and responsibilities of traditional leaders if there is to be any cohesion, effectiveness, and efficiency in the governance and management space of development in the spaces where there are traditional leaders and municipal councils. So, Mr. President, what comes out of this is that you are overstretching yourself and your ministers are sitting at home doing absolutely nothing. So as the reshuffle comes,
Thank you,
deal with your ministers.
Honourable Member.
Stop taking on responsibilities that ordinarily should be with ministers. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Time up, Honourable Member. Thank you. Honourable Member F.A. Masiko.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Mrs. Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngagula, His Excellency the President Ramaphosa, His Excellency the Deputy President, the two Chief Whips of the Majority Party, Members of Parliament, fellow South Africans. We stand before this august House with a deep sense of appreciation and humility to debate the State of the Nation address on behalf of the People's Movement, the African National Congress. Our honor is derived from the fact that we are a year shy from the 30th anniversary of our democratic breakthrough. We, the formerly oppressed, still occupy this platform where the future of our country is debated and decided. As we progress towards the 30th years of democratic South Africa, we have progressed in our transformation agenda, and we greatly appreciate that. More importantly, we know for a fact that despite the many challenges we face as a country, our country is a far better place to live in, as the post-apartheid dispensation ushered a society premised on equality, justice, and shared humanity. It is unfortunate that our detractors without substance have yet again attempted to deny millions of South Africans in all corners of our country the opportunity to receive a detailed analysis and account on the journey our beloved country has traveled in the current conjuncture. The sonnet delivered by the President of our Republic was a true and frank reflection of our society in the current epoch. It gave a clear indication of what needs to happen for us to successfully navigate our stormy seas. Therefore, to suggest that the address by the President lacked detail is both disingenuous and a pure political theatrics driven by populism. Madam Speaker, it is indeed of the greatness of our glorious movement, the African National Congress, and all its virtues that our Parliament is independent and empowered to perform its oversight role effectively, with transparency and without hindrance. Honourable members, through the oversight role of Parliament, we will make sure that we hold the executive to account. However, unlike our friends from the opposition, the performance of our work does not seek to overthrow a democratically elected government by underhanded means, but by one that seeks to advance the attainment of a national democratic society. It is such a shame that our country is becoming a laughingstock which undermines our standing amongst nations because of a minority of members of this parliament who, having failed to win through the ballot, have sought to prohibit a democratically elected government from addressing this House. Madam Speaker, we are proud that not less than 21 bills are before this parliament for consideration, which the opposition parties are opposed to because theirs is a rejectionist approach without substance to take our nation forward. These transformative bills before the sixth parliament include the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, so as to recognize South African Sign Language as one of the official languages, the National Health Insurance Bill, which seeks to transform our country's health care for equitable access and distribution, the National Youth Development Agency Amendment Bill, which seeks to respond to the outcry from public regarding the poor visibility of the National Youth Development Agency, particularly in the rural areas, and optimized service delivery. The much-awaited National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Bill, which seeks to establish a multi-sectorial, independent and non-partisan statutory body that will be tabled before the Portfolio Committee of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. The Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, which seeks to enhance our education system and accelerate addressing structural challenges in the sector. The Climate Bill, which seeks to enable adaptation and mitigation interventions to respond to transit to low-carbon economy. And the Expropriation Bill, which provides for the expropriation of property for a public purpose or a public interest. This legislation will enable the acceleration of land reform. This is to mention a few transformative legislation the ANC is advancing in Parliament to transform our society and to respond to challenges confronting the nation. We are a parliament at work. We appreciate that our people did not fight for democracy alone, but for material changes in their lives. Honorable Speaker, about a month ago, our country was plunged into darkness with the passing of one of the foremost activists for liberation and women emancipation, the first Speaker of this Parliament and the democratic era, Dr. Freni Ginwala, a fearless fighter for women's rights and our liberator who was never far from the battlefront and had no fear to execute the struggle. It is as a result of the struggles of Dr. Ginwala, Mama Charlotte Maxeke, Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Helen Joseph, and Portia Ndwandwe that women like ourselves can not only dream, but are an integral part of building a new country out of the ruins of apartheid. I'm happy to report, Mr. President, that women across the country have heeded your call to action for all South Africans to work together to tackle the challenges we face, instead of wallowing in despair and lamenting our fate. Mr. President, 3 South African women have long answered your call, and they are representing our countries in platforms many of us in this House never heard of. Mrs. Ncumi Sandelu, the founder of One Family, One Stockpile, Ms. Melanie Bruma, the founder of Upcycled Clothing Collective, and Ms. Pamela Padayachi, the founder of Women Pact, I continue the work they are already doing on their own to the benefit of South Africa and many others beyond our borders. Honorable members, as we execute the current phase of the struggle, we will not be defocused by sideshows and theatrics. We will endeavor to remain true to the ideas of our founders of this struggle.
Thank you,
Lastly,
honourable members.
we know that we have a capable captain at the
Honourable
wheel
member.
in the form of President Ramaphosa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honourable Ntate Mishwe.
Honorable Speaker, firstly, I want to thank you and honorable members for your prayers and kind words of condolences at the loss of my courageous, loving and dear wife of 46 years, Mrs. Lydia Mishwe, who passed away on the 25th of January this year. She left me with 3 amazing children and 3 wonderful grandchildren. Secondly, I want to thank you, Mr. President, most heartily for visiting my family at home, to convey your personal condolences and pay your last respects to a great woman who was your secretary when you were the chairman of the Students' Christian Movement at the University of the North in 1973. Mr. President, my children specifically asked me to convey their gratitude to you for the hour you spent with them and spoke to them like a caring father and not like a president. Thank you. As I have decided to dedicate my speech today to my precious wife, who is now with the Lord, I'm going to raise 2 issues she was unhappy about at the time of her homegoing. Besides high levels of crime in the country, particularly the rape of women and children that she was very upset about, she was concerned about the regular blackouts that are costing jobs, livelihoods, and loss of lives of patients who rely on constant electric-powered machines that supply them with oxygen. Mr. President, it is very unfortunate to know that the unreliable ESCOM of today used to be the #1 power utility in the world. While addressing leaders of political parties on the 15th of January 2023, the President told us that the challenges of ESCOM include criminality, corruption, lack of maintenance, lack of accountability, and lawlessness. The President further said that the journey of ESCOM started gloriously right at the beginning when it attracted some of the best skilled engineers. But because it was run as an apartheid entity, he said, when government embraced transformation, that led to a number of challenges. The President further said that they have sourced the expertise of an international company to address the culture of lawlessness at ESCOM. The ACDP does not agree with this decision, just as we do not agree with the addition of yet another minister to an already bloated cabinet to deal with ESCOM challenges. We are convinced that ESCOM does not need another politician with the title of Minister of Electricity, but it needs a professional, skilled engineer who knows what the team that made ESCOM win the title of the best power utility company in the world did, regardless of their skin color. Speaker, our people are tired of these unending rolling blackouts that make their lives difficult. They want electricity now. They want government to stop putting their skin color before skill, competence, and efficiency. Demands for electricity in South Africa are increasing daily. Whilst there is increasing pressure to adopt non-fossil fuel electricity generating technologies, the abundant reserves and low-cost coal make it the preferred energy source to meet increasing electricity demand for the foreseeable future. The world's relative dependence on coal does not mean that the role of coal burning in global climate change will continue unchecked. A variety of options referred to as clean coal technologies are being researched and implemented throughout the world, with South Africa and ESCOM making significant contributions to this field. Clean coal technologies use coal for power generation in more environmentally acceptable and economically viable ways. They include processes that can be upheld before, during, and after utilization. And as I conclude with the second issue that concerned my wife and also a number of ACDP people, is that there is now a talk of a new world order that the president we know supported when he addressed the rally on the 27th of April 2018 in the Free State. That is disappointing to us because we know what the implications thereof are going to be. I want to announce today that my family and I will, together with faithful members of the ACDP, never be part of this one world religion that will come with a new world order, that will be imposed on citizens of the world by agents of the Antichrist. We believe in Jesus Christ alone and will never apologize for it. I thank you.
I thank you, Ntatu Meshwe. Siyabonga ube phakathi kwethu noba kunjalo. Thank you, Baba Meshwe. Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable D. Ryder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, how dare you stand up here and coldly quote statistics of failed local government as if you are not part of the failure of local government. You, sir, spent 4 years as Deputy President, the leader of government business. And today marks the 5th anniversary of your tenure as President. That's 9 years that you have had to fix local government, sir. Your very own 9 wasted years. It was you, sir, that appointed Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as the minister in the COGTA role. She has failed municipalities dismally, but more importantly, she has failed residents. This is demonstrated not only in the implosion of municipalities, but also by her department's own evaluation, having not achieved almost half of the agreed departmental outcomes. Mr. President, I'm quite pleased that you didn't mention the district development model in your SONA speech this year. I presume that you have realized that this project was dead before it even started. But Mr. President, the line that you spoke last week about enhancing capacity amongst officials was a copy, almost a copy and paste of your speech from 2021. In fact, if one looks back to the promises that were made in the NDP when it was launched in 2013, the same promises were there and have been regularly repeated ever since. But on the ground, sir, dololo, nothing. Also in last week's speech, you promised that interventions from national government would take place where local governments fail in their responsibilities. This should not be something new either. The Constitution makes it an imperative, especially in cases such as the Mfuleni local municipality, where the provincial efforts at administration have failed repeatedly. 5 years of provincial administration and the experience of people living in Mfuleni has become dramatically worse, not better. But while speaking of the failed Mfuleni, one just has to look next door to Midvaal, their neighbor, which announced their 9th consecutive clean audit earlier this month. Service delivery, while under pressure as a result of the population growth, as people come to Midvaal seeking a better quality of life, service delivery continues. This is simply because of good governance, a term that is poorly understood, but is probably better described as the DA difference. But the Midvaal story is not alone. Instead of comparing two different municipalities, let's compare the DA-led Umgeni municipality with itself when it was under ANC government until recently. The stark contrast is understood after a brief discussion with the people of Mpopomeni, who are receiving fair services for the first time ever, smashing the myth that the DA only services wealthy suburbs. The DA is raising the standard of living across all racial and economic groups, and doing this while also paying off the municipality's ANC-incurred debts. The residents of South Africa are voting with their feet, migrating in numbers to Democratic Alliance-led municipalities and to the DA-led Western Cape province. Yes, it takes time to turn around a big metro after years of ANC misrule, mismanagement, and misappropriation, especially with the underqualified and over-politicized cadres that are deployed in municipalities at all levels. Yes, coalitions are hard to manage, especially in minority governments. But overall, if you live in a DA-led municipality, you can rest assured that the funds entrusted to the council are being well spent on a service delivery-focused agenda. While the model of local government in South Africa does indeed need some tweaking, the model is not the cause of the collapse. The thieving ANC is the cause of the collapse. Mr. President, I'm sure I don't need to remind you that you are not only the president of our country, but you are also the president of the ANC. In fact, you've made it plain to South Africans on numerous occasions that you disappointingly value your ANC presidency above that of South Africa. But how can you have allowed there to be 2 ANC mayors in the Northwest Province, in Ditsobotla municipality, for almost 2 years? How embarrassing and ridiculous to have a mayor from each of the 2 biggest factions within your organization, and your minister did nothing. And you, Mr. President, did nothing, not as the president of South Africa, nor as the president of the ANC. Mr. President, it's way past time for a decisive shuffle. The media is full of stories claiming that Minister Dlamini Zuma will remain in the failed COGTA portfolio in spite of her proven ineptitude. Perhaps she'll be ensuring that cigarettes and alcohol are banned because their consumption may lead to increased electricity usage under your version of a state of disaster. The fact is, Mr. President, that any cabinet shuffle will still leave us with the same rotten ANC members that we already have, like the boorish police minister. The best of the ANC is substantially worse than the worst of the DA. This country does not need a cabinet shuffle, it needs a government shuffle. Woza 2024, Woza freedom from the ANC, Woza freedom for all South Africans.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you, honorable members. I now invite the Honorable Minister of Social Development.
Honorable Speaker, President of the Republic and President of the African National Congress, like it or not. By the way, he is a president of the country. And the fact that he is a president of the African National Congress does not mean that he is not conscious of the fact that he is the president of the country. And the reason why you see him sitting here throughout and listening to each and every one, patiently doing so, it is because he is the president of South Africa. Futhi nje-ke, Honorable Speaker, bengingasoze ngiqale la ngiqala khona manje. Kusuke nje kwaba nomunye u-Honorable Member Ryder ovele wadelela nje ilanga libalele. Wavele nje wacabanga ukuthi ku-right ukuthi yena athi kuwe, Mr. President, how dare you? I wonder if bekulesa sikhathi sabo kume upresident wabo la ubengasho ukuthi how dare you? Usho njalo ngoba uyeyisa. Usho njalo ngoba uyadelela. Usho njalo ngoba usitshene ukuthi upresident we-African National Congress, upresident we-country, uzotshelwa wuye ukuthi unkosazana Dlamini Zuma kufuneka kwenziweni ngaye. Asizutshelwa wuwe-ke, Mr. Ryder. Get it right today and for tomorrow. Mr. President, honorable members, inkinga esinayo la kulendlu Inkinga esibhekene nayo ukuthi abanye bavele nje basukume bazoma la, babhede ba-expect ukuthi sobalalela. Siyafuna ukunilalela. Sifuna ukunilalela mangabe ninezinto ezithize ezisifundisayo ukuthi singayilungisa kanjani iSouth Africa. Mangabe aninako ke ukwenza lokho, nifuna ukudlala ipolitiki ekseni nantambama, hlalani lapho nodwa, thina siyasebenza. Futhi nje ke Mr. President, kwakunesikhathi where people used to clap and make noise and be happy about the antics of Parliament. Mr. President, I was one of those, but the people of South Africa are tired of it. Hence, I took that decision to say it shall not happen again. And I'll tell you why it mustn't happen. It mustn't happen because we sit here as members of Parliament and we have people at home watching us and copying some of the things that are ugly when they happen here. And I repeat again, Mr. President, the time for our antics are over. The people of South Africa want to hear, how are we going to deal with load shedding? How are we going to deal with water problems? How are we going to deal with housing? How are we going to deal with all the social ills that are facing the people of South Africa? Now that I've said my first say, Mr. President, may I thank Deputy Minister ongqokise leskipa engisigqokile namhlanje. Ngicela nje bambone ngoba naye ugqoke sona leso skipa. Mr. President, permit me and Madam Speaker to observe the pursuit of the spirit of South Africa's collective hope, common purpose, and people-centered action that the President is reviving in all of us through the SONA. Please allow me to congratulate South Africa's women's national cricket team for their triumphant performance against New Zealand on Monday. To them, I say, against all odds, you embodied President Ramaphosa's characterization that, and I quote, "It is hope that sustains us and fuels our determination to overcome even the greatest of difficulties," close quote. Your selfless commitment to the South African collective reminds us of what our society is capable of when acting in common purpose. Yes, underlying our national character is our collective, undefeated spirit. And this spirit has been undefeated since some of us became members of the African National Congress and cadres of the African National Congress since we were 19 years old. This country was liberated. To the young people of South Africa, please look up to these young women, because some people stand up and say you do not have people to look up to. These are the women which I believe young people of South Africa can look up to. Noting 2023 as a year of decisive action to advance people's interests individually and collectively, we are better off invoking the forces that draws us together and deploy our respective resources towards carrying out our national mission. Our national mission requires that we draw contributions from each one of us of our most precious resources, namely each South African, towards the better building of a society. Your needs must ignite the hearts of your immediate family, community, and the people of this land. Your best deeds must be directed towards molding the people's collective aspirations into a South African reality that we want. It is a time, Mr. President, that you spoke about gender-based violence, and it is this time that we have to be united against fighting all forms of ills in our society, and in particular violence. Not only violence against women and children, but violence in general, because we still suffer the hang-ups of the olden days of apartheid, the days which were instilled in us to say we need to fight at every corner. Now is the time for us to collectively fight against gender-based violence. We have a program which the President spoke to briefly, the National Strategic Plan on GBV. And Mr. President, may I take this opportunity to say to those who were criticizing and saying you didn't say much about it, it is our responsibility, all of us as ministers, to come here and explain exactly what we are going to do about it, how are we going to do it, and when are we going to do it. Owing to the rising cost of living and to the new view to cushion the most vulnerable among South Africans from the effects of known and novel risks alike, the Department of Social Development in its portfolio is in the process of devising something which scares some people, something that makes the people of South Africa have hope, and that is the basic income grant. We have already agreed that the people of South Africa who are most vulnerable need it. It is also about what we are going to do about it. While these historic conditions resulted in the innovative delivery of free basic services, including housing, health services, public amenities, and social grants to the majority of South Africa's population, I remind you that last year, Minister of Finance, the Honorable Enoch Godongwana, informed us that government will be spending 3.33 trillion on social wage over a period of 3 years. While we are entering the second year of the 3 years, we should particularly be mindful that this allocation is targeted at leaving no one behind. There are those, Mr. President, who say, where is the money going to come from? Let me remind us all that the majority of South Africans who are at home, who could have 20, 30 years ago taken care of themselves because they had jobs, because they could be able to take care of their future, they were unable to do that. So if they were not able to do that, it becomes our responsibility to take care of them. Notwithstanding the sharp economic growth slowdown globally and owing to centrality of the role of people in the reconstruction of our national life, the sixth administration continues to prioritize the provision of all categories of social wage. This government considers the dignity of each South African as indispensable, including leyenu naninhleli ngapha ngakwa-left, neyenu indispensable. Mr. President, I wish to indicate to the people of South Africa that as a Department of Social Development, we will be coming back with a plan, just like all other ministers will be coming back with a plan. And the plan is to march towards 2024. Laba bathi bazosibonisa sobonisa bona.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. Honorable Imam Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Mr. President, Deputy President, honorable members in the House. Allow me at the very outset to pay tribute to our artist who was gunned down, AKA. Condolences to his family and friends and the country at large. But also allow me to pay tribute to a selfless leader, Mr. President, that was brutally and mercilessly gunned down in Eldorado Park, Ayub Mangali. And his only fault was he was doing what we should be doing in this House, and that is protecting our communities from drug dealers and gangsterism. He was gunned down right in front of his house. May his soul rest in peace. Allow me also to express my disappointment that we have not said anything about the first indigenous nation who are the rightful heirs of the land, the water, and the minerals in this country. But let's hope that with the remaining part of the debate, something will be said in recognition of their own. Mr. President, we've heard a whole lot of political parties say a whole lot of things. And let us admit we are in a crisis, and we've got lots of challenges in this country. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? I think the time has come to admit we have made mistakes. We are facing difficulties. and to come together as a united nation to find solutions in the interest of the 62 million people that we serve. Now, let me say this, Mr. President, sorry, through you, Honorable Speaker or Madam Speaker. Local government will never come right, Mr. President. These coalition governments that you see that are collapsing on a daily basis are not collapsing because they care about the people on the ground. No, Mr. President. It is all about corruption and looting about where we can get more. When you get less today, then you will go there tomorrow. When you get more there, you'll come this side. That's what it is all about. So I want to plead with you, which I've done repeatedly, Mr. President, is close the gaps to corruption at local government level. Let's have a more credible and transparent process. I'm not sure if the Deputy Minister is here of corporate governance, because with a very good contribution yesterday, what I'm saying is, let us, through the local media, provide on a monthly basis the names of every service provider who has been awarded contracts, together the names of those companies, the values, and the itemized billing. That will not eradicate it totally, but it will to some extent deter these corrupt politicians that are engaging in coalition governments, particularly if you see what is happening in KwaZulu-Natal and many other parts of the country. That is why there's very little or no delivery of services. Mr. President, I think one of the problems is, and I must agree, that if you're going to talk about a Minister of Electricity, we're going to need one of water. Because the crisis you're going to face in South Africa of water is going to be 10 times that of energy. I want to say it again and again. You don't need one for potholes. I'm told we've already found one. But water is a crisis. Even though you talk about projects that we want to implement, you are losing 54% of water through leakage and poor infrastructure in the country. Mr. President, speak to your police officers and you will then find out why they are not motivated. A constable earns 13,000 Rand a month and after deduction takes home about 7,000 or 8,000 Rand. The moment he dons that outfit of the police services, and I'm not talking about branded goods of Gucci and others, Louis Vuitton, the police outfit, his life is already in danger. Do you know what they get, Mr. President? 400 Rand for a danger allowance. Do you think they can do justice? No, they can't. Mr. President, we need to address the state of dysfunctional families. Last year, we had 91,000 children give birth to children in this country, and we think it's okay. Let me tell you the statistics of education, Mr. President. The pass rate in mathematics, in science is so dismal, and yet we talk about we're going to want engineers. What engineers are we going to produce? 60% of those that go to TVET colleges, which you're talking about, Mr. President, of funding 30,000, 60% drop out in the first year. That is the state. Children as old as 10 years old cannot read and write, Mr. President. So yes, indeed, my time is running out, restricted to 5 minutes. I have a lot more to say, Mr. President. Lastly, on the issue of land, what stops us from providing every South Africa through your family to your local government a piece of property which they can call home and give them back their dignity, give them the services of water and sanitation. 5 years later, they'll be happy. But distribute it today to every South African family through every local government in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Imam. I now invite the Honorable Nodada.
Somlomo Malunga Begegileyo, fellow South Africans, Molweni. Mr. President, I sat in these very benches attentively last Thursday to listen to your solemn speech. To be honest, I did so with little less hope than the thousands of parents who in 1994 put their trust in the ANC to escape oppression. They trusted that Bantu education would be replaced by quality education that would provide a pathway out of poverty and unemployment. Mr. President, imagine a child born into our democracy, Not only their parents' pride and joy, but a hope of a nation. Let's take the story of young Kanya, whose name means light, born in Kolobeni. 29 years into our democracy, Kanya will have to overcome so many obstacles if he is to become one of only 3 in every 10 young adults who are employed in this country living a life of dignity. He, like many, will quickly realize that he has had the misfortune of being born to one of the 30 million South Africans who live under 17 Rand a day, stretching their support grant as far as possible to survive child stunting. The reality is that he will most likely be one of the 50% of grade 1 pupils who drop out and never complete matric. His parents will soon realize that he is one of 8 in 10 grade 4 children who can't read for meaning in any language, attending one of the 89% of schools without a library to even help with that reading. By grade 6, he surely would have been taught by one of the 1,575 unqualified teachers who fail exams for the very same subjects that they teach. Kanya might find himself in one of the chronically overcrowded classes, struggling with the pace and content of the CAPS curriculum. Kanya's light dimming by the day. Given that South African teachers spend an average of 12% less time teaching than planned, Kanya is most certainly going to be one of the 80% of children who will receive an education that is amongst the very worst in the world across all indicators, sending him to a lifetime of poverty. There's a high likelihood that his life, like thousands of other children, will be endangered in one of the 1,423 schools that still use pit toilets and dilapidated mud and asbestos infrastructure, despite your ANC government's promise to eradicate them. Or he might lose his life to the violent crime and behavior on our school grounds, like Sean Mpela, who was fatally stabbed outside Gelixdal Secondary School in Brakpan. At this point, he may even consider dropping out, potentially joining the 3.8 million youth not in education, employment, or training, a figure that has increased by over 500,000 young people since your last SONA speech, Mr. President. If through sheer grit and determination, Kanya and millions of young South Africans learners beat these odds of poor quality teaching, overcrowding, dropping out, survive dying in a pit toilet or being stabbed to death, and in fact, actually pass a matric exam, chances are they will be part of the 68% of matrics without bachelor passes with slim chances of accessing an institution of higher learning. Mr. President, the real matric pass rate is in fact 54.6%, not 80.1%. This paints a darker picture than the one you tried to make us believe on Thursday. Your government has in fact left behind over 337,000 learners who should have completed matric in 2022. Mr. President, your government's sole focus on quantity means nothing if quality and depth in education is left out of the equation. Only 32% of this cohort achieved a bachelor's pass, and even worse, only 13% will access a university, and the rest will be left staring unemployment in the face. If Kanya and thousands of learners qualify to access a university, they might form part of the 50 to 60% of first-year learners who are unable to cope and fail due to poor foundational education. When the ANC education system is done with Kanya and the millions of young people, they will form part of the 7 in every 10 young people who are unemployed, standing at robots with their graduation gowns, seeking for jobs, sentenced to a lifetime of poverty by this ANC government. Mr. President, your party's broken education system has blacked out Kanya's light and shattered the hopes his parents once carried, load-shedding his future and the millions of young South Africans like him to a life of unemployment. This, sir, is your government's legacy, the new form of oppression. I-ANC sele ijike yangumbutho wengcindezelo igcinezela ulutsha laseMzantsi Afrika ngokubanika imfundo engekho semgangathweni, imfundo ezabaqhubela kubomi bentlupheko apho bengazufumana misebenzi baphele bengomahlalela bekhongozele kulorhulumente we-ANC onguhlohle zakhe. Nilibulele ikamva labantwana beli mongameli. It was at this podium last year, sir, that you promised to eradicate pit toilets and rapidly build more schools to curb overcrowding. Yet nothing was budgeted, no mention of progress in your SONA speech, and you had accepted some of my proposals. At this podium is where I warned you that poor quality teaching is a major cause of poor quality outcomes, and that you should prioritize the professional development of teachers and establish an independent school monitoring evaluation authority to monitor quality teaching in the classroom. Still no action. I pleaded with you to track, trace, and retain learners to schools so that we don't lose them to unemployment, poverty, or crime. You agreed, yet there has been no mitigating strategy to curb the problem thus far. Early literacy is the key, Mr. President. Last year, I begged you to prioritize reading, writing, language, numeracy by backing it with a budget to catch up, yet there is still zero in the basic education budget for reading. There is no silent revolution happening in our schools. Sir, there is a thunderous crisis. However, there is one place working hard to give Kenya a pathway out of poverty, where more learners stay in school until matric, where quality teaching is monitored, there is an investment in reading for meaning, and infrastructure is being built. Through its rapid school build program, the DA-run Western Cape has managed to build an equivalent of one school in every 4 days. Through its independent school evaluation authority, the Western Cape is promoting quality teaching in the classroom, and therefore learners get quality education. And through its reading program, the DA-run Western Cape is going all out to address the reading crisis. If children can't read, they are doomed before they even begin. Children in the Western Cape schools are spending an extra 2 hours per week on reading, and a new budget of 111 million has been allocated for reading, targeted at Afrikaans and isiXhosa schools. That is why there's double the number of children who can read in the Western Cape in comparison to the rest of the country. Sir, your new special purpose vehicle must fly off the paper and be implemented. Fellow South Africans, I know that many of you are Kanya, and your light too has been blacked out by the ANC government. Now is the time to cut the ANC's power. Now is the time to vote for the DA that will forge an education pathway out of poverty. Like Madiba said, if the ANC does to you what the apartheid did to you, then you must do to the ANC what you did to the apartheid government. It is now time to end this oppression. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite order, honorable members. Order. I now. Thank you. I now invite Honorable the Minister of Home Affairs.
Madam Speaker, Excellency President Ramaphosa, my colleagues in the executive, honorable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the speaker who was pranking here like a small chihuahua eating at the heels must be very careful, because he belongs to a party that easily do black shading. He might be black shade next week, so you must just prank very carefully. Mr. President, last year, in your State of the Nation address, you announced that the Department of Home Affairs will be hiring 10,000 unemployed graduates in the field of IT, record, and document management. Last week, you gave reports by making it known to the nation that the Department of Home Affairs has already appointed the first cohort of these 10,000. Mr. President, yes, we have divided the young ones into 3 cohorts. The first 2,000, the second 4,000, and the last 4,000. This first cohort has completed their training last week in Benoni and have already been dispatched to all provinces to start their important job, their first work in their life. These young people will be employed for a period of 3 years to transform these paper records into digital files. The advert for the second cohort of 4,000 is out already, and the closing period is in the next 2 weeks. All the 10,000 young people will be on the job by the end of April this year. I must state that the recruitment process unveiled young people with highly impressive qualifications and technical skills, like the 29-year-old Papedi Sibeng from Polokwane in Limpopo, who has a master's degree in information studies and was hence appointed as one of the managers' digitization project. I can assure Mr. President, this has got nothing to do with where the Minister of Home Affairs is coming from. It just happened. Your announcement, Mr. President, after your announcement, Mr. President, there are many people who were asking, what are these records all about? They are actually files of records of birth, marriage, death, IDs, passports, and other identification documents that are in our possession since 1895. Some of you in this House might regard this as a mundane project. His Excellency, Mr. President, some of these records have already helped some families to claim back their land because they were able to prove through the records who their ancestors were. Now, can you imagine if they were to fade away due to age, or worse still, to perish in a fire or some such natural disaster? State South Africa has been digitizing these files for the past 7 years, but we're only able to complete 5 million per annum. Thanks for Treasury for availing 2.4 billion rand for the next 3 financial years for this project of national significance. Members of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs often get irritated when members of the public complain that they've been waiting for a very long time for an amendment or a rectification on their name or date of birth. Remember, when you change anything on your ID, on your date of birth, I mean to say, or even your name, you actually get a new ID altogether. You are a new person. Some of these people even resort to the courts, and on many occasions, the courts rule in their favor. Now, where is the delay? We actually spend many months because officials have to literally forage among these 350 million records to check the original details that a person seeks to amend. So this project is a significant milestone for us in Home Affairs and the citizens as a whole. Many people will relish not having to pay repeated visits to Home Affairs as they are doing. Mr. President, annually, we get about 80,000 people who want to amend their date of birth or the spelling or something on their surname. And you can imagine having to look for 80,000 records among 350 million. During our budget vote last year, Mr. President, we announced that we are going to do everything in our power to provide the public with multiple platforms to acquire identification and travel documents from Home Affairs, to avoid the long queues and its attendant hardships. One such a platform is to offer services in the main shopping malls of the country, where people do not have to queue, but come and do their shopping while waiting for their turn to be served. I'm happy to announce that systems and equipment have already been set up at mainland Mall in Tshwane.